It's all good.
Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program is rated for all audiences.
The Nanosecond podcast is sponsored by CrookedRiverRadio.com. Do you find yourself endlessly searching for something to listen to while you're doing housework, working, or tending all your daily chores? Well, look no further. Tune in to the Crooked River Radio Network for an experience unlike any other. With top 40 hits,
welcome to the Nanosecond podcast. With your hosts, Erik Nannarone, Nick Goglioni, and Pat Morrow. Interesting topics, intriguing conversation, and entertainment. Erik, Nick, and Pat will be right with you.
Hello and welcome to the Nanosecond podcast. I'm Erik.
And I'm Pat with some really creative programming.
Yes, always creative. And today we have a guest. His name is Jessie from Barrett Sports Media.
Jesse's been with us before.
Yes.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Boy, I'm gonna give it to you.
But let's get into another topic before we get into the NFL. So, Odyssey just filed for bankruptcy, and so what is there going to be effects of maybe a few assets that have to be dumped, like sold off?
So, the other day, Odyssey announced that they are going into bankruptcy. It was an announcement that if you were following their business transactions, wasn't too much of a shocker. They've been in debt for a while. They've switched names, but they haven't switched debts. The debt has stayed the same. It's been an unfortunate situation for them. The reason they've been in debt is because, just like everybody else in the media, advertising is down. It's really hard to really make yourself different with the fragmentation of media. There's so many streaming services, so many TV networks, so many radio stations, so many owners of radio stations, so many podcasts that exist that there just isn't enough money to split between all companies for them to make the revenue that they were making and used to in the heyday of radio in the 80s and the 90s. And so this was a move that was not unexpected, but luckily this will not affect operations for your favorite Odyssey radio stations or podcasts. This will not affect any employees and their paychecks, their benefits. It's a restructuring that will actually wipe out $1.3 billion out of Odyssey's $1.6 billion in debt. And Odyssey has a lot of assets to, show for itself that probably gives debt holders a good reason to keep faith with the company. I mean, they have some of the biggest radio stations in the nation when it comes to sports talk. WFAN in New York is a huge moneymaker still to this day. Their podcast business is booming. Stephen A. Smith, you may hear him advertising his podcast all the time on ESPN. It is not an ESPN-owned podcast. He owns the podcast, but he produces it in conjunction with Odyssey. And so there's a lot of sports podcasts and betting podcasts and radio shows that are out there that Odyssey is in cahoots with and is in charge of. And it is why they're going to stay in business. And the debt holders are actually going to acquire ownership stake in the company in order to sustain the company. And hopefully, things start to head towards the correct trajectory as Odyssey starts to move into becoming a more digital app, kind of in the way that iHeart has really transformed into a digital company by signing hosts to produce and host podcasts, by really emphasizing their app, but not letting go of their terrestrial radio audience either. So Odyssey is gonna be fine. Will it be $1 trillion company like Amazon and Apple? Probably never, unless something miraculous happens. But it seems like for now everything is okay. If you look actually in Dallas, Odyssey's radio station over there, the sports radio station over there, they just renewed their deal with the Texas Rangers, broadcast deal, and so Odyssey has done something that Bally Sports can't do, and that just tells you the trust that everybody in the industry has right now in the success of Odyssey in the future.
Could you see somebody like Apple or Amazon getting into the radio side of things? Maybe not becoming a big conglomerate and having 500 stations across the country, but maybe a couple stations in a couple markets. Like, could you see Amazon or Apple doing that, or
Well,
Spotify?
they've tried. All of them
Okay.
have tried. On their own apps. Apple has tried something called Beats One. It is a radio station. You can actually still access it if you have Apple Music. And actually, I think you can access it even if you don't have Apple Music, where they hire these big radio hosts to produce music shows. And Apple's tried to produce companion podcasts to some of their TV shows. Amazon had a whole radio app known as AMP that included sports talk. Michelle Beadle was a key personality on that app, but it ended up getting shut down. Apple hasn't gone into sports talk. I don't foresee them going into sports talk. There's so many other podcasting companies out there that are doing sports talk. Spotify is a big proprietor, of sports talk in the podcast sphere through The Ringer. They own The Ringer now, and so will they go into sports radio? Maybe they'll have a podcast or two distributed through the radio, but will they go and try to compete with Odyssey and iHeartRadio on the terrestrial radio space? Very unlikely.
Interesting.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I've heard. I've heard that within the next 25 years, there isn't really going to be that much of a thing called terrestrial radio. They think that all the stations are going to end up failing. And it may be, it could be, as far as that goes, it could become a mom and pop thing again, which is what it should have. It's been reverting back to that for a long time. Used to be, you had to be a conglomerate in order just to get through the licensing of a terrestrial radio, let alone FM or anything like that. And all of a sudden, we're getting back to that thing because of the fact that it's all losing money. In some aspects, I got to tell you, I applaud that because these lawyers bought into these stations back in the 70s and 80s, wanting to use them as a loss. It was a tax write-off. And that's why that industry is in the shape it is in today. Any comment about that?
Yeah, I can comment about that. I do not believe terrestrial radio will ever die. I remember since I'm 30 years old now, I've been hearing terrestrial radio was going to die since I was a kid. And I believed it at some point. But if you look at the statistics, Nielsen, I believe, did a study in 2009 saying that 92% of Americans listen to radio at least once a week. That study was redone in 2022, and it was only down 10% to around 80% of Americans listening to radio. There's still a lot of places, believe it or not, in 2024 where broadband internet is really difficult to get. Radio is accessible. It's an easy way to get information out, especially during emergencies. Now, will there be less radio stations? Hell yeah. And I think that's already happening. There might, you might go into certain cities and have maybe 5 or 6 major radio stations, right? And most of the radio stations in certain markets and big markets might be owned by only 3 companies, which is sad because it kind of you kind of lose the diversification of voices. But I think terrestrial radio will always exist because it's so accessible. People are always going to drive their cars to go somewhere. Electric cars are coming up, and I hear that there's some electric cars that they kind of promote more satellite radio or visual devices versus the radio, or you connecting to YouTube. And so I think that will take that will continue to slowly take the market share away from terrestrial radio. But as long as your dad and your mom are still driving that 1995 or 2005 Toyota Camry, terrestrial radio is always going to be around. And it may not be a huge business compared to television, but I think people like iHeartRadio who kind of pivot and and Odyssey's trying to do the same thing, making sure that you have this constant stream of revenue that's coming from terrestrial radio that still exists, but also making sure that you're putting resources into the digital atmosphere and that you're making money off of that, and slowly moving your financials into the digital sphere so that you're not as worried about a dying medium. That's a smart idea, but terrestrial radio will always be around.
Let me give you a what if. So what if these car makers, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, and whatever, or what is it now, Stellantis, what if they start making radio? The big thing that I got a problem with any kind of, listening to the internet in the car, number one, I got to do it on my phone. Number two, the fact is, if I go to listen to it through the radio in the car, I'd probably have to pay for it. And it's so difficult for me to take and hook up this wire, pull this wire off, take and tune it to this channel, and blah, 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 blah. If they make that so the internet radio comes up as a choice first, I'll bet you $20. I'll bet you $20 right here and now. What I said would happen within 25 or 30 years is probably going to happen. The availability and the ease of operation is what's holding them back right now. That's a fact.
I agree, and from what I've read, I can't give you any specifics, but I've read that the scenario that you're giving is something that they're actually trying to do. But I still think, even with that terrestrial radio will still be around because it's something that everybody knows how to use. It's a product that everybody knows how to access. It's something that, ad companies and advertisers and TV companies and media companies always talk about, hey, yeah, we want to get the 18 to 35 demographic. Of course, makes a lot of sense.
They're the ones that got the money.
Everybody else over 35 is still alive. They're not going anywhere. They're still alive. They're still around. Humans are living longer than we used to in the past, and they still listen to the radio. And so, again, is radio going to be the hottest thing out there, the hippest thing out there? I think those days are gone, but I think it will still have a significant effect. I mean, in 2022, for 80% of Americans to still listen to the radio once a week, that tells you something.
Are there possibly going to be less music stations, though, with all the options for music out there? Are either these companies going to eventually sell them off, or because using?
Well, the thing is, there's nobody to sell them off to. Nobody wants to buy. Nobody wants to buy a radio station.
Oh, really?
I'd buy one. Pick me. I'll give you $500 for it.
Yeah. Okay.
I want your transmitter because I'm gonna do more with that
Yeah.
stuff than you'd ever believe. All right,
Yeah.
I know your time is limited, and I don't mean to take the show over from Eric, but I'm going to do it anyway,
Okay.
just because I can. What about your coach for the Michigan Wolverine or for Michigan?
My coach.
Yeah, what about your coach?
He's my coach all of a sudden. First of all,
Well, you're
technically speaking,
that Michigan fan. You're that Baltimore fan.
hey, that's my coach is John Harbaugh, not Jim Harbaugh. But let me say, I was super happy, super proud of Jim. All these years he's put in as a player, including being a former Ravens quarterback, as a coach with the 49ers, heartbreaking loss in the Super Bowl, and to now finally reach the mountaintop. Now, cheating or not, he reached the mountaintop. He quieted down the doubters. Cheating is a thing that everybody's doing in college sports nowadays, unfortunately. And so I'm proud of him. I'm happy for him. And Ryan Day, his days are numbered.
Did you see that they released? Who was that I texted you about, Eric? That guy you wanted?
He said Mike Vrabel.
Vrabel. Mike Vrabel.
Oh, the Titans, yeah.
And he's an OSU alum, so he obviously understands that rivalry.
Yeah, I think Michigan. It's only up from here. They're gonna be a perennial contender for a long time, especially now that they've won this. They've always been really good at recruiting. Obviously, always been one of the top teams in the Big Ten. They're gonna have more to prove with more teams joining the Big Ten, and whether Jim Harbaugh is there or not, I'm happy for them. They've been a team. They're like that friend that always has potential but never actually achieves their goals. And then when they finally achieve their goals, you're like, yeah, finally, you did it. This is what I've seen. This is the vision all along. And Ohio State, you guys, I'm worried about y'all because your fan base isn't going to be too happy if Michigan wins another one and Ohio State isn't in the playoff at least next year.
I don't see Day staying here another year, to be honest. I really don't. I don't see that. I think what's going to end up they're going to take, and if they don't pick up Vrabel, they'll pick up somebody else. And
Vrabel might go to New England if New England gets rid of Belichick. That's the hot rumor right now.
Oh my! I don't like the idea of that either.
But then again, Vrabel wasn't a great coach with Tennessee, and at least he had Derrick Henry in Tennessee. What would he have in New England? Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi?
Well, he'll have a draft pick. He'll have a draft pick to pick a quarterback at least. So we'll see. But you raised a really good point, Eric, in the sense that he's kind of walking into a similar situation in New England. Tennessee lacked in quarterback play. Derrick Henry was injured half the time of his tenure. But he brings energy, he brings passion, and he's an entertaining coach to watch. So we'll see what happens.
All right, now for I know you know this. You know this is going to happen in 2 weeks. It's going to end up being Baltimore and the Browns. What are you guys going to do with Flacco?
Listen, I'll be honest. You guys are the only team I'm scared of. I think up and down, top to bottom, we are the most talented team in the NFL. Forget the AFC. We're the most talented team in the NFL, point blank period. But I don't think there's a defense in the AFC better than the Browns right now. I think the only reason we lost the first game against the Browns, and we were talking about it on this podcast around that week, so go back and watch the tape.
Yep.
Because of the poor quarterback play on you guys' end. When you guys had an adequate quarterback the second time around, you guys beat us. And so, and division games can go any way. So you guys are definitely a team that I'm afraid of. Joe Flacco has the hot hand. He's of course a beloved figure here in Baltimore after bringing us a ring. And there's a lot of people who, I guess, and you heard the Fox Sports host say it, like their quarterback's quarterbacky. They like when their quarterback is standing in the pocket and zips a pass to tight end for a 10-yard gain. Doesn't really like when their quarterbacks have dual talents, unfortunately. And so some fans before this year's run were still hesitant of Lamar Jackson. Imagine that. And so I'm scared to even face the possibility of idiots here in Baltimore rooting for Flacco because of their love for Flacco and their love for that quarterbacky kind of feel. But I'm really happy for him. The guy was sitting at home. He asked the Jets if he could come and help out, and they said no. So it's a miraculous story. I still, as much as I'm scared of you guys, we are clicking on all cylinders like never before. Our defense is breaking records that haven't been seen ever in history. Lamar is finally fully healthy. He's going to be healthy throughout the playoffs. His conditioning is better than ever before. Our running back core is a little bit depleted, but we've recovered. And Gus Edwards, I trust. And I don't think there's anybody in this league that can stop us, except for you guys. And I still don't think you guys can stop us.
We'll see.
I'll
tell you the one, to be honest about it, the one I'm worried about is the Texans. Because we didn't play, when we played them the last time, Stroud wasn't playing. And he's probably going to be playing this time. And I'm a little leery of him. That's a good solid quarterback there. The one thing I want to say about Flacco, though, and I haven't really expounded on this anywhere up to this point. Flacco brought not only his skill, but he brought knowledge and a demeanor to this team that this team's never seen before. The guy came in here, he wasn't flamboyant or anything like that. But he said, "This is what we need to win. This is what you need to change to make this win." And
I have a question for you guys. Is there a quarterback controversy?
I bet there is. No, I don't think so. What I've been hearing, they've already tried to, they've already signed Flacco to a 2-year, but I think he's going to be more behind the scenes. I'll probably make him a second or third string. And Lamar Jackson, Watson, whoever the hell it is this week. Watson is he's the money guy, and you know they're going to be depending on the money. They're going to be depending on the money guy. Once the money guy gets hurt or says he limps off the field or something like that, then of course your Mr. Flacco will go in there and win the game for us. But
he's experienced. He's done it before.
He's actually given me a better insight of what it's like to have a winning quarterback like that. The guy's amazing. And to be honest, I didn't want him here. Every time he came to Brown Stadium, he beat the pants off of us. Not only with when he was with you guys, but didn't he play for the Jets?
Yeah, he was the quarterback for the 13-point comeback.
He come in and beat the pants off us with the Jets, and I didn't want him here. I thought, what a waste of time. He don't want to be here. And then
what I love about Flacco, and I got to witness this, his rookie and sophomore season, he didn't know how to recognize defenders coming near him and him having to throw the ball away or him having to take a sack. He would be reckless. And that third year when he finally played with relaxation and poise, and he was just ready to take on whatever needed to happen to make sure that his team's field position is good and to set the team up for the next play, and just to have poise while in the pocket. It's what I love to see. It's what I love to see, and I'm jealous that you guys get to see him playing in this level, but I'm happy for him. Whether he goes far or not, he's gotten a lot extra money than he thought he was going to get, and it's a feel-good story. Who doesn't love feel-good stories?
That's
Especially
exactly right.
with everything coming up this year.
5 quarterbacks.
But I still got my Ravens. I think Lamar is focused on in a different way than we've seen before. I think he's hungry. He's ready. You notice when everybody talks about how he asking him how he feels about potentially being MVP, he's not concerned about that. He doesn't care. He has one focus in mind, and I think that's motivated the defense to play in ways that we haven't seen since that 2000 Ravens team that also won a Super Bowl, and so I think this just feels like our year. It feels like our year, and I'm praying it's our year.
Well, I think whoever ends up in it is probably going to end up. I'm thinking it's going to end up with San Francisco. They'll be in a Super Bowl. And
as
it could
bad
be
as the Eagles
San
have been
Francisco
playing,
against you guys or us or some mixture of that. I think that may be what happens.
as bad as the Eagles have been playing, I wouldn't put the Bird Bowl past us. I still think.
Hell, I wouldn't put Pittsburgh past us. And look at how they muscled their way into this.
Yeah, but I mean, Pittsburgh played against a Ravens team that wasn't in full strength. I think they can win next week. Other than that, you're pushing it.
They're not going to. I don't see them winning because T.J. Watt's out, and T.J. Watt was what was driving that team.
Yeah, they're playing the Dolphins though, right?
No, they play Buffalo.
They play Buffalo.
Buffalo's going to slaughter them. I watched that Buffalo game last week, and that's going to be pretty hard to beat.
Yeah. I'm not scared of Buffalo either. Josh Allen is Brett Favre reincarnated. He'll do his best to win the game towards the end. But the fact that your team is even in that kind of deficit, you can't do that playing the Ravens. The Ravens start fast and will score 30 on you in the first half.
Yeah, they play mean. But we can play mean too, especially as far as Miles.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that C.J. Stroud doesn't know about yet. He hasn't been introduced to Mr. Garrett. but he will be.
Oh.
I think we lost him.
Yeah.
I think he dropped, yeah. I had the same problem earlier. Yeah, we had a wind strike and the power surge. That's why I was knocked off. So it took me a little while to reset to come back in. So
what happened with Frank?
I gave him all the contacts and he wasn't able to make it through. So I just said, hey, we'll try it again some other time. So we'll do it another time.
Okay. That was an interesting segment.
Yeah, it was.
It was. I've been kind of wanting him in here so I could ream him about them Ravens, and then especially that other team up north with the other Harbaugh brother. But we thank him for. If he doesn't make it back in, we still thank him for coming in. It was an interesting evening.
It has been. Do you guys remember the Harbaugh Bowl from about 10 years ago when John and Jim actually faced each other?
They faced each other, that's right. And that was the first time that in a bowl game like that any brother had faced each other as a coach. I remember that. I've been around a long time.
So have I.
Too
A
damn
little, not as long as you, but still
Too
long
damn
enough.
long. Well, not too damn long. I won't say that. I don't want to go yet.
Hey, neither do
But yeah, it's you okay, Eric?
What?
You okay?
Yeah. I had to blow my nose. I'm
Happens to
under
the
the
best.
weather today,
You,
so
you just stay home, behave yourself, take and get yourself some whiskey and a little tea, and go to bed.
yeah.
Nice hot toddy and hit the rack. Yeah, I know all about that.
Great idea.
But if I could
My
drink, that's
grandfather's
probably what I
favorite
would have
drink
already
after
done.
going out to hunt.
I ain't allowed to drink because of the pills I'm on.
I'm in that same boat, so
So anyway, what else are we going to talk about tonight?
Evan, what
We
would
get
you like to talk about?
let's just talk about the matchup between the Browns and the Texans. We've previewed it a little bit, but I'd love to dig a little deeper. And do we really think that even as good as C.J. Stroud has been for the Texans, he's going to be able to just win a game all by himself? It seems to me like he's going to need their defense is going to have to at least respond a little bit. Joe had a fairly easy time going down the field when we faced the Texans. Christmas Eve, as I recall, they didn't really put up a huge fight, even though the score was a little closer than I would have liked. But it sounds a little bit, from a national perspective, like their offense is the one to beat now that we have a quarterback that can actually move the ball and has the smarts. This should be something that favors the Browns. I would think. Just certainly on the defensive side, we have the better defense. There's no question about that. So I'd love to hear what you guys feel about that.
I'm looking to see what the actual stats are.
I saw that there was a leak in the roof at that stadium, so there maybe.
Yeah, I saw. I wondered if that was that stadium.
Yeah.
Energy Field. Yeah, that's where the Texans play at home. That's where the national championship game was last night.
Isn't that in Arlington?
Houston.
Yeah.
Houston. The one that you're thinking of is AT&T Field, known colloquially as Jerry World because of Jerry Jones being the owner of the Cowboys. Having built it out there, but that's AT&T Field.
I'm looking to see how what their defense and offensive ratings are. And then I'll expound on that, what I think. I kind of think that they're not going to beat us. If they're going to beat us, it's got to be on the offensive side.
Yeah, a shootout. I would think you're right. It would have to be a shootout.
And I think this is going to be a really close one.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go to Texans. Oh. I'm still thinking here. Go ahead and talk amongst yourselves while I figure this out.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we could talk about some of the other matchups that are going to be happening. NFC side, the Eagles looked like they were world beaters, and then for the past month they've been, cratering. So, who likes their chances right now? I don't.
I don't either. Honestly, I think that they're gonna go down. I don't see that. I think with the loss of both of their coordinators, that's just gonna take them. That's just gonna be too much to overcome at once.
The Texans' offensive rating is 28. The Browns are 16.
Okay.
And then I'm going to look up the defensive side.
Yeah. I know overall we're number one, and that hasn't changed. There's some categories where we're not number one, but we're probably top 10 in nearly all the defensive categories. And I don't think the Texans are in the top 10. They're probably middle tier to bottom somewhere.
We'll find out here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go there. As far as let's talk about the Buffalo and Pittsburgh, because I don't very rarely get to expound on them because of my distaste for them. But anybody that knows me knows that
Pittsburgh sucks! Pittsburgh sucks! Pittsburgh sucks! Pittsburgh sucks!
to be honest about it, I'm surprised they're even in the playoffs.
I am too. They just don't look right. I mean, I remember seeing a game probably a month ago where they were hosting the Arizona Cardinals. Now the Cardinals, I think, ended up with, 4 wins, this season. And the Steelers they didn't look right, and they were hosting the Cardinals. And we always think Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium now, boy. Any event, that's another debate for another day. But that home field has for decades been really, their secret weapon, having, their fans out with terrible towels, and just the feeling for the road team that goes in here. But it wasn't like that when the Cardinals played. And there was another game, and I can't remember the other game that I saw that the Steelers played, but it was an inferior team. It was like the Patriots or some other team. I can't remember. I haven't paid attention to their schedule closely, but they don't look right. There's something missing, and I can't really put my finger on it. It just seems a little, they just seem off. Their offense, for a while there was lifeless. Now they've changed quarterbacks. They fired their offensive coordinator, and that's helped, a little bit. But again, looking at last week's game against the Ravens, when they were the visiting team, we can't really put a lot of stock into that, because the Ravens did exactly the same thing the Browns did and a couple of other teams. If they didn't have anything to play for to speak of, like improving your playoff positioning or doing something else like that, they rested their regulars. So you can't really give last week.
Even with the Ravens last week, they rested their main people, and that's why they ended up getting beat. I knew going into that Cincinnati game we were going to lose. I even took Cincinnati on the picks Saturday.
Yeah. That's exactly the way I felt. The same thing. But if we're just trying to measure all these teams that we could potentially face, I'm just looking at it from an analytical point of view, and I'm saying the Steelers are not right. They don't have a dominating defense. They don't really have an offense that moves the ball all that well. I mean, they were a throwing team for a long time when Ben Roethlisberger finally discovered his throwing arm. They still had a fairly good running game, but this year there's something missing about them. I can't really pin it down. They look like they're off. The Buffalo Bills, we already talked a little bit about them. They are pretty much okay, Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, you can have them one week playing and they're piling up the points on somebody, and then next week, we've talked about Josh Allen. He's like, a little Brett Favre. He'll turn the ball over, and then the Bills end up losing, and people are shrugging their shoulders. Well, what was that all about? And the only team that I see that we would potentially face that might give us real problems is the Ravens. They're really the only ones that are as close to being complete and balanced. The Dolphins are a better version, in my opinion, of the Bills. They don't turn the ball over quite as much, like the Bills do, but they're a slightly better version. They obviously can score. I mean, 70 points on the Denver Broncos, 1 week. So that tells you something right there. And I'm looking at all these matchups that are coming up. The Chiefs don't look like they're world beaters anymore. They look kind of, they've taken a step back. Travis Kelce has had some drops, which have hurt him a bunch. They don't have their passing offense really working quite as well. Defense doesn't really seem in sync either. I'm looking at that, and I could go clear back to week 1 when the Detroit Lions came in to Arrowhead to play the Chiefs, and that in years gone by, you would have said Kansas City Chiefs will just rout the Detroit Lions, and the Lions had other ideas.
Have come a long way.
Oh, they have. Absolutely,
really have.
They have. They absolutely have. They're like the Browns. They're like a mirror image of the Browns in that regard. In the NFC, they haven't had this good a year since John Kennedy was president. That was 1962. I remember hearing here, a couple of months ago when the season began. But you look at all of our, go back to our AFC opponents here. The only other team that I can think of, that would give us a little bit of time. All right, we've already talked about the Texans. We've talked about the Steelers. We've talked about the Bills. We've talked about the Dolphins. Then we have the Ravens. Obviously the Browns. Now, who am I missing here? Who am I missing? I'm trying to think of who else made the playoffs here, and I'm coming up empty at the moment. I mean, I'm pretty sure when I hear the name, it'll come.
Well,
right
the
to
ones
me,
that have made it around us would be the Buffalo. They ended up in. The Jets are done. Bill and company is done. The Steelers backed into it, and Cincinnati was pretty much done. Yeah,
they had one divisional win, and it was because we pretty much let them have it. Otherwise, they would have had a big fat goose egg in the division, which would have, even if they had a slightly better record, that divisional record would have that hurt them big time.
That didn't prove anything to me, though, Evan. The simple fact of it is, we have owned Cincinnati for a lot of years, at least 8 that I can think of. They've won 2 games against us in 8 years. We've owned them, and and especially this last year, thanks to Miles. Miles Garrett is probably the best football player in the league right now. As far as going back to the Texans thing, though, the Texans are, I think their defense is 14th. We're number 1.
Okay.
And so, they're underlings for us. I still think I'm a little leery of Stroud because we haven't played him. But then again, he hasn't been introduced the right way to Mr. Garrett. Mr. Garrett has a lot to say about the way ball games go. You can ask any ref.
Oh, yeah.
There was a couple of games ago. He actually walked up to her. They asked him what he said to the ref after after he wasn't called for like the fifth time. He says, he says, and this was right after that, what he said about the refs. He walked up to the one that completely and totally missed a call. And he walked up, he says, I told that ref, I said, if you're not going to call this game, he says, I'm going to run this game like I want to run it. And he did. They ended up, I don't remember who they beat, probably 3 or 4 games ago. Was it the Jets? But, you know, they ended up, he ended up doing it, playing his game the way he wanted to play it. And then all of a sudden, they decided they were going to start doing the calls on him or on the other players for the holding. You know, if that's the way they want to do it, that's fine.
Sure.
He'll run it. Hell, I'd do the same thing. You don't want to play fair? I'll make you play fair. Anyway, let's. Anything else we need to discuss? Erik had to bail because he's having trouble breathing.
Oh, he's having trouble. Well, I already covered the AFC teams, so you know I'll go to the NFC, and I'm looking at who made it there. We didn't play the Packers. We played the Rams, but that was the first week we had Joe Flacco, and it was in their place. They're okay. You know, again, the Eagles I'm not sold on. The Buccaneers, they pretty much backed in. The Lions are better. I don't see much in the Cowboys. I still think out of all the teams in the NFC, the 49ers are still the favorites to go to the Super Bowl.
I wouldn't count the Cowboys out.
Yeah.
Because the Cowboys have got a lot of talent there. And Dak is pretty much in his stream. Yeah, I watch a lot of those games just because my son lives down there. And we talk about them on the other show all the time. So I wouldn't count them out. I think if it's going to come down to anything, it's probably going to be the Eagles. I don't see Kansas City being in the discussion.
Not this year.
It's going to be the Eagles, but not by much. It may be the Cowboys, but my pick is actually going to be on the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards that myself.
I think the 49ers have got a pretty good shot at this.
I would say
now on the off offense, if it came down to the 49ers and the Browns, keep in mind the Browns have already beat them once.
Yes, and that's exactly how I approached these brackets. Is who did we play in the regular season and how did we fare? Now again, we didn't win against the Rams. We had a tough time there. We beat the 49ers, and it was here. We didn't play the Chiefs. We didn't play the Dolphins, and we didn't play the Bills. So we don't really have a whole lot. All the other teams in the AFC, we've had we've had a victory because 3 of the 4 teams in the AFC North made the playoffs. So we've by just the sheer schedule, we played all the other these other teams that were in the playoffs. We played 3 of the possible 6 other rivals we would have. So, but I would love to see the Browns do this. I'd like to see this whatever we call it, curse or burden, whatever of never making the Super Bowl. Despite having several opportunities over the years, and having it snatched away through fate or bad luck, whatever it was. Drive. Yeah, all those things. Yeah, all those things. And it would be nice to take the Browns off of the never list, never even having been to the Super Bowl, since that's a short list, and the only other AFC teams that can say never are the team we're going to see next weekend, the Texans, and the Jags, and both of those teams weren't even around before 1995. So they are more modern. You know, the only other team that has never been to the Super Bowl before is the Detroit Lions, because they've had horrible luck over the years as well. So,
Yep.
we'll see.
Well, we'll just have to see what happens. It's going to be an interesting 4 weeks. I think we got 3 games, 4 games. Counting this one coming up. So we'll know in a month. Anyway,
Yes,
you want to wrap it?
Sure. On behalf of Erik Nannarone, this is Evan Auld. Thanks for tuning in to the Nanosecond Podcast. We will talk to you guys again soon.
Well, that was pretty professional, but
I've done this for a while.
I think it's time to make like a hockey player and get the puck out of here.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Pittsburgh!
Pittsburgh Sox!